Hey guys, Wyatt Claypool here, and I am back again to talk about the ongoing Air Canada strike fiasco and how badly Prime Minister Mark Carney and the Liberal government is handling it. And that's not just me saying it, it's not the Conservative Party, it's not the NDP, it's not people who used to vote NDP who voted Liberal in this last election who say they're going back to NDP. There is a Liberal MP saying the Liberals are mishandling it. Yeah, he doesn't directly call out Mark Carney or the Jobs and Families Minister Patty Hajdu, but the message is very clear. I'm about to get to this in just a second. I just want to remind you guys, if you're not yet a subscriber to the channel, make sure to hit the subscribe button. I am trying to get to 100,000 subscribers by mid-December of this year so I can avoid paying for dinner for my 4 friends. I made the dumbest bet of my life, challenging them that if I could get to 100,000, them four would owe me one guy dinner one time. And if I lose, I, one guy, owe them four dinner. That was very awkwardly worded, but you get the whole idea. So subscribe so my bill for dinner in December will be zero rather than like $350. Anyway, so here is Liberal MP for which riding? Let's just verify this. I know it's in Toronto. Beaches East York. Nate Erskine-Smith says some labor disputes are complicated. This one isn't. Air Canada should pay and treat its flight attendants fairly. And this is obviously a big shot across the bow of the leadership of the Liberal government, Carney, Hajdu, and others. Nate Erskine-Smith was specifically kind of messed over by Carney. You will remember when Carney first became the prime minister after Justin Trudeau stepped down and he won the leadership, he made Nate Erskine-Smith the Minister of Housing. And then post election, he was no longer the Minister of Housing, which is very hilarious because he made him the Minister of Housing so Nate would agree to run for the party and then immediately pulled the rug out from under him and then made the former incompetent mayor of Vancouver the housing minister despite having a terrible housing record of his own. And now we have Nate seemingly agitated and more likely to tell people what he thinks. Now, again, he's not saying the Liberal government's screwing this up. How could they? I'm going to leave the party. But everyone knows what Nate is doing here. He is saying that the government, who is ordering flight attendants who work for Air Canada to stop, cease their striking and go back to work, that they are taking the wrong position. And frankly, everyone's kind of oversimplifying this, but the group that is oversimplifying it the most is the Liberal government and Mark Carney, who are just saying that, yeah, we just send people back to work and maybe there'll be a better deal made at some point. It's the stupidest position for them to be taking on this entire issue, and I'm here for it. I love seeing the Liberals under pressure and seeing their supporters, their hardcore supporters, still justifying how they're doing the right thing. Like we saw people in my last video saying, well, this is no time for a strike. We need to bust up the strike and push them back to work. There's a trade crisis going on, don't you know? They're so thick-headed. You think they would understand that 8% of people who voted NDP in the 2021 election ended up voting Liberal in 2025. And those are the voters who are most likely to say, Liberals have lost my trust in them, and I'm going back to vote for the NDP. Because in fact, the NDP are actually doing a pretty good job of capitalizing on this. Are they wrong about the issue? Oh, goodness, of course they're wrong about the issue. They're the NDP. It doesn't mean that the flight attendants striking is necessarily wrong. It's that they're basically trying to blame greedy corporations. Guys, you don't have to like airlines. I tend to fly a lot. I actually have a strange affection for airlines, but it's not the airline's fault that the flight attendants aren't paid very well. It's federal and provincial and municipal government policy. It's the amount of airport fees that these airlines have to staple onto their tickets, meaning that their profit margin goes down. It's the fact that they pay high corporate taxes like every corporation, but in a very profit sensitive industry. And on top of all of this, you have municipal governments that take massive airport rental fees from the airport, which means the airports then have to charge the airlines more airport improvement fees and other baggage and security fees more than they normally would. This is an overall systemic policy failure that the NDP is now turning into greedy corporations. But it's better than the Liberals' position, which is go back to work, you filthy animals, and that's it. But here is Don Davies, the interim federal NDP leader, at a picketing event, yelling into a microphone. It honestly doesn't even matter what he's saying. The only thing that matters is that, goodness, look, the NDP has energy for once. It's not like Jagmeet Singh's comatose party lying on the ground wishing for death.
Customer service agents, they grab you. Everybody gave concessions to this company when they needed it. You signed 10-year collective agreements, unheard of in the industry. You rolled back your wages. You took all sorts of working condition concessions, and you did it to help the company. Now, where are we today? This company is making billions of dollars. Their executives are making millions of dollars, and they are sitting here wanting you to work for free. Let me tell you, sisters and brothers, slavery is illegal in this country.
Oh my goodness, it's so overwrought, but I'm kind of here for it. Again, it's so stupid. But I like the fact that this is going to start taking a chunk out of the Liberals, because the Liberals have played stupid games, and now they are winning a very stupid prize, which is losing their labor and progressive base. They are going to hold on to some progressives, especially retired progressives, the people who've been voting Liberal for 12 straight years or more. But they are going to lose, again, that 8% of especially younger progressive voters who swapped from voting NDP in this election to voting Liberal in order to keep out the Conservatives. Tons of social media posts everywhere. All these people saying, well, if they're going to betray us, I'm going to go back and join the NDP again. I'm ripping up my membership. I went through tons of these posts yesterday, posts that have thousands of likes, hundreds of retweets. And I could go over even more now, but it gets a little bit pedantic. But this is such a poor decision for the Liberals. Again, this actual situation takes a fulsome policy review. We need tax reform, we need regulatory reform, and we need these workers being treated fairer. Although, when you actually dig into it, it's actually CUPE's fault. And you'll see there the CUPE union for the flight attendants is present. They were the ones who signed this bad deal, yet they're still pretending it has nothing to do with them, even though they're the idiots who signed their flight attendants to this strange deal where, yeah, you do make a lot of money per hour when the plane's actually in transit, but when it's not, you get paid nothing. But anyways, I'll let Don Davies scream here for another 7 seconds, and then I want to move on to something else. Or I guess there's nothing else. They just wanted to hear all the, they're just posting more honking. I do like how they all have trans pride progress flags and whatnot. Like, what does this have to do with anything? What does this have to do with the union strike? And the answer is it's just progressive nonsense. It's just that everything must be part of the progressive cause. So, bring your pride flags, bring your trans pride progress flags, because something flight attendants workers' rights. He's been doing a lot of stuff about how most of flight attendants are women. It's I don't think this has anything to do with this whole situation. It's just, they've gotten a raw deal, in part because their union sucks, and in part because Air Canada only has a 5.7% profit margin because of terrible policy on the federal, provincial, and municipal level. And so they honestly can't really afford to pay them more. But there's a CEO out there being paid $12 million. The CEO is being paid $12 million. Okay. And do you know why he's paid $12 million? And I'm not trying to be rude, but because he's worth $12 million. Shareholders would never put up with the CEO of a company being paid $12 million if he was losing them revenue year after year. It's probably because he's at least keeping revenue stable in a tough market, or he's increasing them. That's probably why he's paid all that much money. But here's Don Davies' ex-post about him at the picket lines, saying, "It was an honor to join with sisters and brothers supporting flight attendants at YVR this morning. The NDP stands with CUPE to defend free collective bargaining, fair wages, and an end to forced-free labor. Shame on Liberals for siding with corporate profits over workers." And I want to, that's a different issue there, but I want to jump over to another aspect of this whole issue, and that is the way that, like, I want to jump into kind of a little bit more of the actual details of what's going on here, because again, Air Canada is not even necessarily wrong, but again, the way that the Liberals are going about this means that it looks like all they are doing is defending a corporation which has Brookfield Asset Management ties, which is not a great look for Carney. I don't think it's that important of an aspect of the story, but that's present. So maybe you don't want to walk into this situation like an egg road gorilla, swinging your arm, saying that flight attendants have to go back to work. What is this? They're keeping people from going on vacation and business trips. That's a problem. By the way, that is actually a serious issue here. But when they don't address any of the other policy concerns, when they don't say, okay, let's have the government kick in some money here to pay for some extra worker benefits for the next month while we settle this. They had no nuanced take, because I think Carney genuinely is just a guy who just believes he should get what he wants. But this was a statement put out by Air Canada itself just this morning saying, CIRB declares flight attendant strike at Air Canada unlawful and orders QP leaders to direct flight attendants back to work. As much as I will defend Air Canada as not the main villain in this situation, I don't even really think they're a villain. They are also handling the situation so badly. It's so heavy-handed. And yes, people are missing their flights. Focus on that. Don't focus on how the heavy hand of government is going to come in and force people back to work or fine them. But this statement says, Air Canada today said that the Canada Industrial Relations Board, CIRB, has declared ongoing strike activity by the company's 10,000 flight attendants is unlawful and has ordered the leadership of the Canada Union of Public Employees to direct its members to return to work. Following a hearing on August 17th, the CIRB declared that QP strike is unlawful. It ordered the union leadership, which authorized the strike, to immediately tell its members to end the work stoppage. It also directs individual members of the union to cease all unlawful activities and return to work. It is a ruling the board declared, and then it keeps going and just kind of talking more about the details. It should be noted why this is a really bad look. Yes, this is what the CIRB said. Let the CIRB say it. Why are you saying it? Because you know that this can result in jailing of QP leadership if they don't do what the CIRB board is telling them to do. It seems a little aggressive on Air Canada's part. But going back to just sort of the discourse on this issue, I do just want to talk about one more aspect of it in this video, and that is the Conservative Party is right to go after the Liberals on this issue, but I don't think they are doing it the right way. They're still going to get benefit out of the issue, but I think if they want to not only be able to land a solid attack on the Liberals, but also promote their conservative policy, they shouldn't be copying the NDP. We are seeing the NDP trying to turn this into a corporate greed story. They're making billions in revenue. In actual profit, I'm not sure if Air Canada is really making that much money. Again, 5.7% profit margin. But the Conservatives are also repeating the corporate buddies type talking points. And I think it's foolish. Really, the Conservatives should be saying, flight attendants deserve to be paid for every hour they are at work. We should be reworking their contract to be able to ensure that that is done at a reasonable wage, because you can't let them get their full wage right now for every hour they're at work, because many of these flight attendants are being paid like $90 an hour, because the whole point is it's a higher hourly rate because it's only for when the plane's in transit. The current rules mean that oftentimes they're being severely underpaid because of flight delays that they're not being paid during. But what you can say as a conservative is say, we need to rework the contract for these workers. We need to rework the tax system for the airline industry that is basically always teetering on bankruptcy. And the Liberal government shouldn't be forcing people back to work without a real solution. They are basically just clubbing people back to work and making everyone unhappy at the same time. Their actions are just incentivizing more strikes because of how bad their actions look, which means people are missing their flights. They are not actually solving the policy problem. And they are, in fact, actually allowing a PR win for unions on an issue that they're not exactly 100% right about. Everyone's a little bit right, but a lot of people are also very wrong with the perspective they take. And so conservatives take a conservative position on this. Don't just repeat talking points, working class trade union talking points, because they're popular right now, you're not going to win these type of NDP voters. The public, the QP voter will never vote conservative. So at least say something that makes the people getting their flights delayed want to vote conservative. Say something that makes sort of, people who are small business owners say, you know what, that was a good way of putting it. That's a good solution. Or else you're just going to blend into the background with the NDP. Naturally, biggest loser in this story, still Mark Carney and the Liberals. Obviously, they're just suffering on this issue. They're just incompetent. Again, they have Nate Erskine-Smith attacking them because they're vulnerable, and Nate has a bone to pick with the party. And I don't think it's just petty politics. I think this is also genuinely what he believes. And you will notice that no Liberal MPs are sounding off about this. Like Stephen Guilbeault, who was the one who ended up pushing, or actually it was Seamus O'Regan. He stepped down though, but Stephen Guilbeault was very much ballyhooing the former Liberals' piece of anti-scab laws that they were pushing. The Liberals have been pushing a lot of big union type legislation. They've passed a lot of it, and outside of Patty Hajdu, you could hear a pin drop in the Liberal caucus right now. Nobody is repping what the government is doing right now. In fact, the one organization repping them the most is Air Canada. They should really get their PR team to bust into they should fire them all. They should not talk. Hire me. I will. Air Canada. It's time to get in business with me. I'm kidding, but you get my point, guys. The Air Canada should say, we like to pay them more. Right now, our tax rates are murder. So how about we sit down with the government and the unions and solve this? That's what they should be saying. But we have the Liberals. Patty Hajdu drops a bomb in the middle of the room, and they're all like, and then the NDP is taking the initiative from them, which is hilarious because they're probably going to bleed them off about 3 or 4 points in the polls. And yeah, 3 or 4 points in the polls is not everything, but considering the fact that they're supposed to be very popular right now, 3 or 4 points sinks them back to kind of mediocre, January numbers when Trudeau had first stepped down and the Liberal leadership race started up, but people didn't really know what to think about them. It's not great. I just want to quote somebody who I tend to agree with a lot, and they're the best polling analyst in the country at the moment. This is actually one of the funnier things I saw. This is both from Polling Canada, who is run by an NDP guy, as well as Shreya Teest, who I detect as more of a conservative guy. But they're talking about where the current Liberal actions are being defended the most, and I find this funny. Polling Canada says, the place I've seen come to the defense of Air Canada the most is Blue Sky, LMAO. And then Shreya Teest says, there's a reason why Twitter is more politically diverse than Blue Sky, because on Twitter you can find people from all sides of political spectrum, and on Blue Sky it's the only type of you can find are liberals. So on the Twitter competitor Blue Sky that is very liberal and very progressive, they're mostly defending Air Canada because it's where all the diehard liberals end up going to. But Shreya Teest predicts, because of the fallout of this issue, he says, I think the Liberal polling numbers will only come down by 2 to 4%. That's it. And he does phrase that in such a way where it's like, oh, it's only 1 or 2 to 4%. In many of the polls, the Liberals are only leading the Conservatives by 3 to 6 points. If you lose 2 points to 4 points, it's now within a margin of error polling divide between the Conservatives and the Liberals. And again, the Liberals are in their honeymoon period, although I think this actually does demarcate when the honeymoon period ends. And in future videos, we're going to get into just how bad the Liberals are looking like on the world stage. They have all the Hamas activists that they were trying to pander to still harassing them, still attacking them. They have the NATO countries not inviting them to conferences, to leaders meetings in the United States over the Ukraine-Russia issue. We are just being cut out of everything. And eventually, not all of them, but eventually a lot of the elbows up liberals will realize that this is not what they signed up for. I will have a lot of people in comments say, well, you can't convince liberals. Their minds are impregnable to logic. Yeah, that's kind of every party. You'll get a party diehard. Let's say half of any party's voters are diehards who, unless you basically just start torching the party's platform and you stop standing up for the things that you're supposed to stand up for, those people are ride or die. They'll always say that you're doing the right thing. But elections are not won based on who's support completely collapses down to just 5%. The Liberals don't need to collapse for the Conservatives to win a new election. They just need to outpace the Liberals. And if the Liberals fall from 43%, like we've seen in many of these polls, maybe let's say 44, and they fall down to 39 over this or 41, and the Conservatives rise from, 38 to 40, now the Conservatives are in a really good position. And then when we have bad economic news hit the headlines in the aftermath of a lot of people having the shine taken off the Liberal government for them, people are going to start reacting far more aggressively negatively. And I think if you're a conservative, this is a good thing. This is probably the first issue that isn't just something that conservatives will take issue with the Liberal government. It's something that a lot of different types of voters will take issue with, and it will make them more likely to hear about the other scandals that are currently going on with the Liberal government that they've wanted to ignore and just say that's just conservative propaganda. Who cares about what's going on with, Carney's conflicts of interest and Brookfield and what happened with Canada Blood Services and the $92 billion deficit and this, all the other stuff. That it's all conservative conjecture. Well, now it's not all conservative conjecture. Even the NDP, even the Liberals are criticizing the Liberal government for how they ended up handling this particular issue that should have been way easier to handle than they've made it look like. But anyways, with that being said, thank you guys for tuning into this video. I am going to be doing a live stream tonight on the Battle River Crowfoot by-election. It's probably going to be a Poilievre win, obviously, but I think it's still fun to watch the results roll in, especially in the context where there are 214 candidates. Let's see how many candidates get 0 votes. I will be very interested to see. Maybe throw in your prediction. I think there's like 195 candidates in this by-election who are longest ballot committee candidates. Predict out of 190, or I think it's like 195, 198, however many there are, predict what percentage of the longest ballot committee candidates will not get a single vote. But with that being said, I will see you guys all later.